All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA practice exam series where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Mr. Landry is explaining to his class how they can earn extra phone time at the end of class. Mr. Landry tells the class that if Anna and Brad both score 85% or higher on the upcoming quiz, then the entire class will earn 10 minutes of phone time on Friday. What may be an unintended consequence of picking Anna and Brad? All right, so what we have here is a group contingency question. If you've been studying a while and are fluent, you might have picked up on that quick. If not, that's okay. That's how we're going to get better. We're going to get more fluent. We're going to review the questions, and eventually you're going to start picking up on those things very quickly. So the question wants to know the unintended consequence of picking Anna and Brad. What do we know so far? Well, we know so far that the class can earn phone time at the end of the class if Anna and Brad both score 85% or higher on the upcoming quiz. What type of contingency are we describing here? Well, we're describing a dependent group contingency, or the hero procedure. The dependent group contingency is when you have a group and then a sample of that group or a single person in the group is responsible for the whole group's reinforcement. What are some consequences of that type of contingency? Well, the biggest one and why it's called a hero procedure is the social aspect. If Anna or Brad don't earn the time for the class, there could be backlash. So you see, we went through the whole question and basically predicted our answer. So what unintended consequence are we looking at? A, each person in the class will be responsible for their reinforcement, so everyone may not earn it. Well, that's not true because Anna and Brad are responsible for the reinforcement. B, there could be social backlash against Anna and Brad using this approach. Absolutely. Just think about it. Let's say Brad scores an 80% and then nobody gets phone time. That could be very bad socially for Brad. So there's always a risk if you use a dependent contingency that there is backlash against the hero or heroes. C, if one student in the class performs poorly, then no one will earn reinforcement. C is not specific enough, right? Because who are we worried about? We're only worried about Anna and Brad. If Tiffany performs poorly, it doesn't matter. We just need Anna and Brad to score that 85% or higher. And then the phone time is not a big enough incentive for the class. That is potentially true. The question asked, though, about picking Anna and Brad. And the phone time being incentive is unrelated to Anna and Brad. The incentive is more preference. Anna and Brad is going to be our contingency. So it's very important we answer the question at hand, which is about Anna and Brad. And so given picking Anna and Brad is the hero procedure, what might be a consequence? Well, there could be social backlash against Anna and Brad using this approach. Michelle is sitting at her desk while the TV plays in the background. Michelle keeps looking up at the TV instead of focusing on her work, so she keeps telling herself, focus on what you are doing, and puts a tally mark each time she has to tell herself this. What strategy is Michelle using? When we think about self-management, it's one of the few things we study where it's really not necessarily socially mediated, right? We have behavior that is automatic and isn't socially mediated, and the self-management isn't typically socially mediated. You can help you or you can get other people involved in your self-management, but when you see a question where it's one person controlling their own behavior, start to think about self-management. So we're looking at Michelle here and her strategies. She's sitting at her desk and is getting distracted because she's looking up at the TV instead of focusing on her work. So she tells herself, focus on what you're doing. Now stop there. What is Michelle doing there? Well, she's talking to herself, right? She's giving herself instruction. She's also putting a tally mark each time she has to tell herself this. So not only is she giving herself instructions, she's also recording it. So what is Michelle doing? A, self-instruction. Yes, we just covered that, right? She's telling herself, focus on what you're doing. But this is the reason why we work to understand the question, and then we also read every answer choice. Self-instruction is right, but there's also this tally mark each time she has to tell herself this. So what is that? B, mass practice. Mass practice is not this monitoring we're talking about. Mass practice is a strategy where Michelle is going to engage in the same response again and again in order to hopefully change the behavior. It's not what she's doing here. She's monitoring herself using tally marks after providing instruction. So, strategy Michelle is using is A, self instruction, focus on what you're doing, and C, self monitoring, tally mark each time she has to tell herself this. So, the strategy Michelle is using, well, is both A and C. Following 3 weeks of a discrete trial training program, a behavior analyst starts to deliver reinforcement every 8 correct responses on average. Originally, reinforcement was delivered every 4 correct responses. What strategy is the behavior analyst possibly using in this scenario? So, strategy question, and we're looking at the strategy this analyst is using here. So, what do we know so far? Well, we know that there's been 3 weeks of DTT, and reinforcement is now being delivered every 8 correct responses on average. Stop there. We're looking at some sort of variable ratio 8 because we're delivering it on average. We use ratio schedule, or we use variable schedules so that the learner does not know when reinforcement's going to come. Because originally we were using A every 4 correct responses, which was an FR4, which is a fixed ratio, which means the learner can predict when reinforcement's coming. And so if the analyst is going from this fixed schedule to this variable schedule, they're trying to make it so reinforcement is less predictable. So how might we describe that strategy? A, natural contingencies. We don't say anything about natural or incidental contingencies here. We still have this schedule that's based on responses for discrete trial training. So A is out. B, multiple exemplars. When we talk about B, multiple exemplars, we are talking about training different relevant stimuli. We're not talking specifically about what we're training here. We're talking about the reinforcement. And so what we're talking about is indiscriminable contingencies, where we're not allowing the learner to predict or know when the contingency is going to occur. When everything was 4 correct responses, it was easy for the learner to predict the reinforcement. When it's on average and it's on a variable ratio schedule, it's much harder to know when those contingencies are occurring. So the strategy here is indiscriminable contingencies, and you can see that all of these are generalization strategies. And then D, training loosely. Training loosely, you are changing non-critical aspects of the environment. Again, we're not talking specifics here. We're just saying we have a discrete trial training program. We've faded out the reinforcement to a variable schedule, making it harder to predict when reinforcement's coming, and therefore we are using a strategy of indiscriminable contingencies. Aaliyah is potty trained, but is now refusing to use the restroom at school because she is afraid of the toilet flooding. Aaliyah's mom tells Aaliyah that if she uses the toilet at school, then she will let Aaliyah have a sleepover with her friends this weekend. Aaliyah's mom is utilizing what? All right, another strategy question. Okay, a lot of strategy questions. That's good. Strategy questions are usually fairly straightforward, especially when we're just picking the strategy we're using. So what do we know so far about Aaliyah's mom? Well, we know Aaliyah is potty trained, but isn't using the restroom at school. So as a result, Aaliyah's mom is going to implement some sort of strategy. She tells Aaliyah, if you use a toilet at school, then you can have a sleepover with friends this weekend. Now, that's a very straightforward contingency. If you do this, then you get this. If you use the toilet, then you can have a sleepover. Now, specifically, what type of strategy is this? A, non-contingent reinforcement. Well, the reinforcement is not non-contingent. It's very contingent, right? The only way Aaliyah gets a sleepover is if she uses the toilet. A is out. B, a high P request sequence. Aaliyah's mom has not offered up high probability request and then followed with a low probability request. So B, again, is not relevant here. C, antecedent interventions. So be careful here, right? Because the intervention, Aaliyah's mom sets up the contingency, but the intervention is going to be providing the consequence of the sleepover with the friend for using the toilet. And that is very specifically known as the Premack principle. And why is that the Premack principle? Well, the Premack principle says we use the opportunity to engage in highly preferred or more well-liked responses as reinforcement for engaging in lower preferred or unliked responses. And that's exactly what Aaliyah's mom is doing here. You're not using the restroom at school. And so, in order to get the response you want to engage in, you've got to engage in the response you don't want to engage in. And that is the Premack principle. So, Aaliyah's mom is utilizing D, the Premack principle. Strategies like using multiple exemplars, training loosely, and general case analysis are all most related to which of the following behavior analytic ideas. So we just had a similar question here where we talked about exemplars and training loosely and now general case analyses. And all these ideas are part of what? Well, they're all part of generalization strategies. And when we talk generalization, what are we trying to see? Well, we're trying to see, will our teaching work as far as teaching a skill and that skill working or being displayed in non-teaching environments? Our whole goal is to teach in an environment and then have our learner go do whatever we taught in an untaught place with untaught people and untaught stimuli. So if we're talking generalization strategies, what are we talking about? A, internal validity. So internal validity has to do with functional control and a relationship between our interventions and progress. Internal validity is not discussing generality. Internal validity is discussing, are we controlling the behavior in the moment? And when we talk exemplars, training loosely, general case analysis, we're talking generalization. B, inter-observer agreement. Inter-observer agreement, we have two or more people measuring the same thing to see if the data match. Not what we're talking about here, right? Inter-observer agreement is not relevant here. What we're talking about is external validity. External validity asks, does your intervention translate to different scenarios? And while it might not be a one-to-one comparison, external validity is simply saying, can you generalize? And so if we're talking exemplars, training loosely, general case analysis, we're talking generalization. And so external validity, we're talking generalization. So these ideas are related to external validity in the sense we're both talking about generalization. And then data reliability. We're not talking about what makes good data here, right? We're not discussing data. We're talking strategies. And these strategies, these generalization strategies, are related to this idea of external validity, which is also has to do with generality. All right, thank you for watching. Be sure to check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.